off the internet. Here we go.
So we're
Cool.
live.
Mm-hmm.
Just someone had messaged me about shares. It's the second person that's just messaged me about shares in about like the last 30 minutes.
Shares?
Yeah, the stock market. So we're live.
I think I can hear Ellie.
Yeah, he's just left.
Ellie.
I'm surprised he's the only one you can hear. Right. Cool. E te ti I te tā I ngā karangataha maha o te motu. Maori ora kia tātou katoa. No mai ki tēnei kaupapa. Kia ora I te whānau. Welcome to our Facebook Live session this afternoon. We'll be talking about mental health and wellbeing. We've seen a huge increase just over the last couple of months with people being challenged with mental health. Especially with everything that's going on with COVID-19 and us being in isolation. And so we thought that this would be a great opportunity for us to talk about it. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Wyndi Tagi. I'm one of the co-founders of We Accounting. I'm also a business coach. I'm a mum and I dabble in a whole lot of different things. And today's topic is very close to my heart. So for those of you who don't know anything about me, I have had my own personal experiences with depression and with mental illness. And in fact, over these last couple of weeks, I've also had some recent experiences too. So I've had my little cry already, and the two people that I've got on the call with me today have actually been quite instrumental in helping me through some of my challenges as well. And so I really am grateful to both Cheryl and Mike for being with us today. So let me introduce you to who I have. So if you went to the We Summit last year, you will remember Mike Harris. So Mike is a consultant in the area of human behaviour and development. He's been studying it for the last 14 years. And there's a method that he's been learning that he's been teaching me as well, and that's the Demartini Method. So he's a Demartini facilitator and also an NLP practitioner. So he works with people on a personal level in all aspects of life and helps business owners to grow themselves and their businesses. And he's been helping me over the last almost 3 years. So we've been working together, which has been really awesome. And we've seen some huge shifts in We Accounting and also myself. So it's been really cool. So Michael's been coaching and speaking in the area of sales, communication, conflict resolution, personal growth and development, shifting of perceptions, breaking through challenges, overcoming fears and resentments, and creating new strategies, just to name a few. And he's a speaker as well. He's spoken on stages internationally, and he's coached and consulted hundreds of people. So thank you so much, Mike, for being with us today.
You're welcome. Nice to be here.
And we also have Cheryl. So Cheryl, if you weren't aware, so Cheryl started with We Accounting maybe a month or a couple of months ago now, I think. So she's a business success specialist at We. She's also a mum of 3. She's very humble and she didn't really want me to say too much about what she does, but actually Cheryl was one of the very first people that got me into sort of health supplements and thinking more about wellness. And so she is a health and wellness advocate, a very, very good friend of mine, and has been for many, many years. And often when we catch up and talk, we talk a lot about business because we both love business. We talk about personal development because we both like personal development. And we talk about health and wellbeing because we both like to talk about personal health and wellbeing. And it's something that we both do for ourselves and for our families as well. So thank you so much, Cheryl, for being along with us today too.
Thank you so much for having me.
So maybe we should start off, maybe Mike, if you want to start off and open us up with a little bit around what it is that we're sort of seeing at the moment and why you think maybe we're seeing an increase in, mental health challenges, particularly with what we're going through with COVID-19.
Yeah. So, I mean, everyone's been affected differently at the moment. We've all been affected to the same degree in the sense of the rules that apply, unless some of us are, blessed enough to have be in a business that's still an essential business, or a business that can operate online that's not going to interrupt the service. But essentially, what I'm seeing a lot of is, a lot of perceived challenge, more perceived challenge than normal. Obviously, with people's cash flows being affected, businesses being affected, not being able to open up their businesses, this creates a lot of potential stress because we perceive things out of our control. And on top of that, we're also seeing a lot of fear, which is this is an interesting one. Fear that we're seeing is across the media. Now, whether you agree with what the media is saying or disagree with it, the media as we know it likes a little bit of hysteria because hysteria sells. And so what I'm noticing across a lot of the mainstream media channels is a lot of hysteria. And what I've missed myself when I'm walking along the streets, when I go out with my partner and my son, we go for a walk to get some vitamin D. You can see the fear on some people's faces. I've literally had people freeze because we're going to walk past them, and they freeze and almost threw themselves into a fence because the other human being was sort of within 2 meters of each other. And I look at that and I think, wow, that's having a profound effect on obviously their mental well-being. And then that's then having an effect on their physiology, because if you're living in fear, you drop into your amygdala, into your animal mind, and you're being ruled by your emotions, and this then creates more stress on the immune system as well. And so when I see this from a broader scale, there's different gradations and levels of this that's going on. That's one of the biggest things that I'm seeing, coupled with the perceived challenges, that are happening inside their businesses as far as business clients. So that's I'm sure you guys probably notice a little bit of that the same too when you're out and about, just seeing the different areas that people are coming from.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about you, Cheryl? What are you sort of seeing out there?
Yeah, similar things. So for us to actually maintain our mental health, getting out and just going for a walk around our local park, which is down the road from our house, it's really important that we actually go for walks. I am seeing similar things, people just keeping their distance, and that's fine. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing. And experiences like just at home as well, just the impact that's had there. But yeah, similar things.
And so what about the challenge? I mean, Cheryl, you've both got children, so you'll both probably relate. But Cheryl, as a mum, I know that we've had this conversation. I was talking to Mike a couple of weeks ago about the expectations that I had on myself. And here I am watching on social media all of my friends who are taking photos of their children, and they're talking about how they're homeschooling their kids. They're talking about how they're baking and they're going out and playing. And I'm thinking, I'm stuck in a room in front of my computer and I'm working and I'm not able to do all of these things. And then I started to feel really guilty as a mum, because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad mum. I'm just leaving my kids to their own devices. My son's downstairs on the PlayStation. My other kid is in the other room on his computer watching YouTube. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so terrible. So how does this kind of play on mental illness, and what sorts of, what have you sort of experienced yourself?
Yeah, so my experience was actually interesting because in these two stories here, actually. So obviously we got told that there was a lockdown and that happened within 48 hours. And so suddenly we're, everything was plodding along okay. I was at work, the kids were in care or schools, they were comfortable. Suddenly we were all home in like one bubble. And for those people who don't know, a little bit of background about what's happened in my life is that we've just recently, I'm from Avondale, and grew up our whole life in Auckland, and we've just spent the last 6 years living in Perth, and we've just moved back. And in our transition to moving back, we're all my family and I are living in my family home. So in our bubble is 3 generations. So we've got my dad, we've got 4 adults, so that's my my brother, his partner, me, and Mike, and 3 young children. So we've got a 7-year-old, an almost 4-year-old, and a baby who's fully dependent on me. He's 9 months old. So we've got 3 different generations living in one household. So that on its own is huge. Now, I was really fortunate, and I'll touch on that soon, that I had an experience last year in November when we actually moved to New Zealand, because I'd had 4 months as opposed to 4 weeks at home with the children 24/7, because we hadn't found schooling for them yet. And so there was that aspect of it. But then so I was kind of already set up, and I'd had some experiences on how I could actually manage the children and manage my own mental wealth and mental health, well-being at home. But then the other part thrown into this was the fact that I had to be working as well part-time, and that's just a completely different set of rules, because when you're at home mum and you can be there with the children and 100% present with them, then you can set up your timetable accordingly. When you're having to mix the two, work as well as being a mum, then that's where it can get quite messy, and that I wasn't prepared for. So an example of that was, so while I was managing my own well-being, my own mental health, by being really consistent with, my morning routine of doing yoga and meditation and breathing techniques through Kriya, that was okay, because my own mental well-being was okay. But in terms of what was suffering this time around with the work side of things, was that I have really high expectations on myself, and so if I do a job, I like to do it really well. If I have a project, I like to deliver it really well. So that was in huge conflict, because here I am, here's my children, and they're suffering because I can't be present with them, and they're my highest, priority and value. And then at the same time, I'm not able to deliver, the goods to my work, which is really important to me as well. Yeah. So did I answer your question? That's kind of what I've been experiencing.
So, Mike, I know that you're sitting there thinking a whole lot of stuff, because we had this conversation and I can tell by the smirk on your face. So talk us through a little bit about what is going on, not necessarily for the people in our situation, but maybe yes for the people in our situation, but how does the mind work, or how does our thinking work? And how do I simplify this? How do we get to this stage where we're feeling guilt and shame, and then that impacts on our mental health, this conflict of values that most people will probably be feeling at the moment?
Yeah. So I think if we explain to everyone that's listening to this first what we mean by values or priorities, a better way to explain it in some ways. But it's the study of axiology, which is human priority. So each of us have what we call our highest value, our highest priority, all the way down to infinity. And the way we determine or look at our values is how we perceive the world. And it's the perceived voids we had when we were younger that drive our values. So what we think was missing in our life becomes the area we're trying to fill, becomes most important to us. And so each of us have a unique set of values, like a fingerprint. And so therefore, when we interpret the world and we perceive the different things that are taking place, we're literally assessing that, and we're figuring out and working out, does this support my values or challenge my values? And obviously, a lot of people don't want to be challenged, right? We sort of tend to want to draw close to those that support us, and we tend to want to push away from those that challenge us, that challenge our values. And so we're making decisions all day, every day, based on whether we perceive being supported or challenged. So as you could imagine, with this event that's happened, we touched on this at the start, there's some major challenges that are now people are dealing with that they didn't perhaps perceive they were going to have to deal with, it, that we're faced with. And so when I listen to what you guys are both describing, Wyndi, obviously having worked with you for a long time, I understand your values. all of a sudden you're thrust into a situation now where your top value, which is business, is now being challenged from a time perspective and having to give time and energy to other human beings who you love, but it's still detracting from your number one. And so there's a conflict, there's a tear, because there's a part of you wanting to go in to live into your values and like make sure you keep cranking your business, but you've now got these other humans in your space where you wouldn't have had them otherwise. They've got their own unique set of priorities and values. And so then you've got a cluster all of a sudden of all these different values coming in and wanting to be met, which creates a whole lot of conflict and confrontation at times. Where the guilt comes from is the perception that you're causing more pain or drawbacks or negatives to kids, for example. If you were to use your example before, that you felt bad that they're on the PlayStation or on the computer and you're tucked in your office working, it's just the perception that you're causing them a drawback, or there's something you're judging yourself on that you perceive is taken away from them. So that's where guilt comes from. Guilt's the association that we're taking away or creating more pain than pleasure or drawback gain to someone else outside of us. Shame, if someone's feeling shame and they're shameful about what they're doing, then it's an expectation they had of themselves that potentially was unrealistic that they're trying to live into. So it's interesting because when you look at where most human suffering comes from, it comes from trying to obtain that is unobtainable and trying to avoid that is unavoidable. And so if we're creating expectations on ourselves to try and live into a fantasy that's, say, one-sided, or stay supported all the time, or want to ignore the challenges they may be having in their business or their family life, then that fantasy, the comparison of what they would like their life to be, is going to cause the greater nightmare. So the greater the polarity, the greater the roller coaster, the emotional roller coaster. And so it's better to start actually looking at how, for example, if you're perceiving you've got guilt, or you're feeling you've got guilt based on taking away from a child or not giving them the time that you want to be doing, I'd sit and ask the question, for example, like, well, how's me doing my work right now and them doing actually benefiting them? And then sit and just actually start listing the benefits of what's going on for the child at that time and how their values are getting met, to then minimize your guilt.
I mean, if we take it from,
that answers the question.
Yeah, if we take from what you just said, Mike, and if we just continue with the example that we were using, my kids are quite happy sitting on the computer watching YouTube and playing PlayStation, and they're both, well, one of them is playing PlayStation with his mates, so like he's like completely happy that I'm in here busy as doing my job. But the thing is that it's the perception of society, right? It's like me taking what I feel society is telling me that I should be doing as a mum and putting that on top of myself and adding that extra pressure to myself that I don't actually necessarily need to.
Yes. Yeah, so when you use should do's, ought do's, could do's, like imperative language like that, you're injecting someone else's values into you. And therefore, you're condemning yourself for doing that, and you're placing someone else's perception or values of higher importance to your own. And so, yeah, it'd be wise not to be injecting someone else's values, but to honor your, like what I tell all my clients is that our job as a conscious human being is to honor our own values, fulfill our own values, while respecting and appreciating the values of those around you that you love, but not to make you wrong or them wrong or right for whatever it is that their values are, but to love and appreciate them for theirs, and to see how fulfilling their values allows you to fulfill your own. So yeah, if you're like there'll be someone in particular, it won't just be society, there'll be certain individuals that you've subordinated to. In other words, you've minimized your own worth, injected their values, so you've infatuated with them to some degree, and then inject theirs into you because you feel that's what you should be doing. So it's better, I would not advise you to do that. I'd find out who it was that you had minimized yourself to, and to get clear on that for a start, and then look at what you think they have that you don't have, and look where you do have that, because again, in the 7 different areas of life, we're all going to be empowered in different areas. And again, there's different areas of importance to us, so we're going to have more empowerment in those areas that are higher in our values than not. So, yeah.
So would you say that this is a really good time then to listen to what I don't know how you want to say, the universe, your body, your mind is telling you, and to take some time to assess that which is really important to you. So if you are finding that conflict, take the time to find out what are your highest values and then start living into those.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think so Dr. Demartini, who's been my biggest mentor by far in the area of human behavior, he's one of the world leaders in this area. He's been doing it for over 40 years. He's got an autographic, photographic memory. He's read over 30,000 books. The guy's he's got a really high value on teaching and learning and sharing that knowledge. His method that he created, or the value determination process, is what I use with all my clients. That's where I start, because until understand what drives someone and until they understand themselves, whereas a lot of people are living with injected values, not actually living congruent with their values, and they wonder why they keep getting upset with themselves or feeling like they're not achieving, or they're setting goals, for example, that why don't I ever see this goal through? Because often they're setting goals truly aligned and congruent with their highest values. And so we've got the most probability to achieve a goal when we're setting goals that are congruent to what's most important to us. But if we set something that's aligned to something that's way down our list of priorities, then we don't have the intrinsic drive to want to go ahead and achieve that. So understanding yourself first and being okay with what your values are and not minimizing that or making yourself wrong for what your values are, comparing to mum, dad, or whatever, some other person you subordinate to. It's really important to love yourself and respect and appreciate your own values, for sure.
Yeah, totally.
So I recommend go and do the Demartini values determination if they want to get clear. I do this with my clients one-on-one, but he also has a free video that walks you through this website, drdemartini.com.
So I've just posted up that in the comments box. So Dr. John Demartini, the values determinant. So if you Google search that, you'll find it. It's a set of 13 questions that you can ask yourself. And we've got a question that's come through, which you're going to enjoy, Mike, and that is, can you measure a good value versus a bad value?
So, yeah, this is a question that comes up a lot. So when you talk about values, we're not talking about social idealisms like honesty, integrity, nice, open, whatever kind. We're not talking about those types of things. We're talking about things that actually show up in life. So it might be your children, it might be teaching, it might be wealth creation, it might be business, it might be social, it might be physical health and fitness. These are the types of things we're talking about. And so when you look at this is quite cool, because you look at what the internet's provided us now. How many people can you see online doing all these different types of YouTube videos and all these weird niches that you would never think about? But because the internet's given us the chance to spread and connect with like millions and millions of people, there's a lot of people that have similar values. And so it allows now entrepreneurs to find that they may have a real love for example, kids' toys. Like I saw a guy doing videos, and he had millions of subscribers unwrapping kids' toys and talking about the toys. And then he's got millions of subscribers, for example, who would plug in and find value in that, right? And so then he can monetize that, but it's something that he also loves doing. Now, someone else might look at this and go, well, there's a grown man opening toys on a video, on a YouTube thing. Like, what sort of guy does that? And they may have like a completely different set of values, and they'll judge them for that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to you and what's most important to you, not the other person. So learning to separate the concern and worry about your peers or someone else and just honoring yourself is the most important part. And so when you look at how could there be a wrong or right value if it's what's most important to you as an individual.
That judgment's a big part, eh?
Yeah, huge. Like one of the biggest things I like to help people do at the start. Sorry, there's a lag still going on this. Okay. I'll just quickly say, one of the things I love to help people do initially when they come and see me, and you can just see it through their face and their eyes and their energy, is to allow them to accept themselves for who they are and what they want to do in life. Because so many of us feel like we can't just honor ourselves and what we want to do. We've had so much compounding different messages coming in about what we should and shouldn't do, from our parents when we're young to our teachers at school or some other friend's father or mother or someone else we've looked up to. So truly understanding ourselves and loving ourselves and honoring ourselves is like one of the biggest gifts I think we can actually have as a human, as a person.
Mm.
Absolutely. And we've just, that same person's just said, yes, love Dr. John D, especially about money flowing to highest priority. So maybe that's another conversation for us to have in the future, is about wealth creation and how that happens when you have it in your highest values, and how it doesn't happen when you don't have it in your highest values. But that's a whole another topic. So let's talk then a little bit about maybe the people who are thinking, hey, look, am I now experiencing some form of mental health challenge? And, you know, what are some of the things that they might be seeing or experiencing to know, actually, yeah, there's something that's not quite congruent here?
I can share just on my perspective, and just through a lens of being, you know, a mum, and just just through my own lens on that. But, you know, some of the key things that I notice is that when I'm starting to get into a space, and like my husband and I are starting to get bickery towards each other, that's like a key sign that I know that things are starting to pile on top of each other. And what that might look like is, for example, he might start, or I might start being upset about things that are really little and really minor, and things that don't normally upset us. And that's when I know that there's actually something underlying that. And does that make sense? Yeah. And so I know that there's actually something, underlying that's actually going on. And that's one of the telltale points for me and our family is when we start bickering about stuff that I know is just not something that we would normally complain about. And then it's from there it's about having that open conversation.
What do we do in cases like that? Like when you can see it, you know very clearly what's going on, but maybe the person who is experiencing it doesn't understand. I don't know whether they just don't want to see it, or they just are maybe not as aware of it. What can you do to help them or help yourself? Like, what do you do in those sorts of situations? Who wants to answer that?
I'll start, and then I'll hand it over to Mike to elaborate on it. But for us, like that key thing is really just sitting down and having that open, honest conversation. And quite more often than not, it's a really difficult conversation that we try to avoid. I know for myself, I'm an extrovert, and I like having conversations, and talking and listening to somebody, especially my husband, is really like easy for me. It comes easy. But my husband, so I'm half Chinese, half Maori. That's my background, and obviously an extrovert. My husband, on the other hand, is a Pacific Islander. He's a Samoan, typical, very humble man, and he likes to handle things on his own. And he'd probably prefer not to talk about things. Sometimes I just need to bite the bullet and just say, "Hun, we need to have a conversation," and then just talking about it. And then when he's actually sitting there listening to me, he's like, "Okay, makes sense." Yeah. And then we jump onto it straight away rather than leaving it to fester and get worse. Mike?
So the question was, what do you do? What was the question, Wyndi? Just so I can.
So, in the event that you can see that somebody else is going through a mental health challenge, and maybe they're not quite aware themselves, what is it that we can do to help them through it, or to broach the topic, or to get things kind of moving?
Yeah, so I like what Cheryl said about open communication. Also, then looking at what part that you're playing as well is one of the first questions I'd go to, because with an entanglement with two human beings, is always you have your own perceptions about what's going on, and so I'd be asking, well, what part are you playing in this? And if you can see some behaviour that you perceive is not useful for the individual, or is affecting your dynamic, then definitely asking, like, are you open to having a chat? Because as Cheryl said, people are not maybe not as self-aware, maybe not as willing to go there. Maybe it's an area that's a real blind spot and they get triggered, or it's something that's been there for a long time and it's like a little sore spot. So I think getting someone's permission first, and this is something I've had to really learn, because if someone wants assistance, great. If they don't want assistance, that's a whole different ball game. So just really checking in and finding out what's going on for them, and if they're open to having a discussion and working their way through it, for sure. But definitely looking at the part that you play as well. And if there's a behavior, for example, that you're finding that is challenging you or causing you some resentment, you perceive as challenging your values in some way, I'd then sit and ask the question, well, where and when do you demonstrate the same behavior, the same trait, action, or inaction that you perceive your partner doing? Because when we own what we see in them is inside us, then it just brings down the self-righteousness a little bit, because when you see what's in each other is the same, you can't sort of come from an area of judgment, saying
Definitely
down on them and saying that they're wrong, right? So that's what, if I had a client come to me, that's one of the first things I do, which is quite confronting for some people, because they don't want to actually own the thing that they're getting pissed off with in the other person, which is the first step. So I'd get someone to own that to the degree that they perceive their partner's doing it. And then I'd also get them to see, well, how is what they're doing actually a benefit or service to you and your high values? And I'd go through and get them to see how it's a benefit or service. Because once we change our perception, we change our decisions, and then in turn we change our behavior. Those are the three things that any one of us can control: our perceptions, our decisions, and our behavior. So that's a couple of things that I've recommend doing.
And here I am smiling through all of that, because there's been so many times that Mike's used that on me.
Can I share a little story without going into the details? Sure. With Wyndi, it took us an hour and a half. There was something that she'd been really pissed off about, and she was like, I don't do that. It took us an hour and a half to get Wyndi to actually own the very thing that she's seen in this other person. So, and Wyndi's not alone on that. Look, it's each of us are the same, and it's our ability, the speed in which we can do that, we can actually move through those blocks and those obstacles.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Just taking it from a different perspective as well. What I find really helps is actually when I come from a place of empathy or compassion, and actually I put myself in his situation. I just sit there and I think, okay, what is actually going on for him? And which is kind of the same as owning it, owning that I do that as well. So I'm like, okay, where have I done that as well? And then
So being empathetic is a little bit different than owning it yourself, but putting yourself in their shoes and trying to understand again. So this is like a level of appreciation and appreciating, say, your partner's values, right? You're going, well, hang on, because they're looking at the situation differently. They've got a different set of values, and so you need to be able to communicate in a caring fashion. So if we look into that, then there's three different types of communication that takes place. One is careless, where we don't care about the other person's values and we just bulldoze them and just project our values everywhere and just go, we're right and you should be conforming to this, and what are you doing, and not taking their values into consideration. The other is careful communication, which is where you've subordinated or lowered yourself, your perception, to where you've got them and you're too afraid to actually communicate what's important to you because you don't want to upset this person, which is not really probably the healthiest way to be either. And then a caring communication is where you communicate to each other to have each other's values met and heard and understood. And when someone actually sees you actually caring about their values, they're more likely to open up, more likely to communicate with you and to have that dialogue. So, yeah.
So true. A little off the topic, but off the topic of depression and mental illness, but that's probably one of the reasons why mine and Ali's relationship has gotten so much better over the years. Still have our moments. Clearly, Mike's helped us through those. But, if you can understand the other person and their values and then speak into it when you need to, some might call that manipulation and some might say just helping somebody else live into their values. But but yeah, you can, at least you better understand them, and then you're not so quick to judge or put them down or say, hey, look, you shouldn't have done that, or I never do those sorts of things. Because if you even if it takes you an hour and a half, even if you do look at it deep enough, you'll see that actually you have owned that too. So that's so important.
Totally.
So
I think just on that too, I was just going to say too, because I've had people come through my the work that I've done with them, and it's about managing our expectations as well, and realizing that there's always going to be challenged. Like we have a one-sided life, and so even though, say for example, you do work with your partner, you do work on specific traits or actions or things that are going on, there's always, you're going to evolve from one challenge to the next, because that's how the game's set up. So your sphere of awareness will grow, your ability to handle different things and different challenges will grow. You'll always advance to another challenge. So just acknowledging that and realizing as well that nothing in life is ever one-sided. So a lot of the movies and these things that are put out, and a lot of the sort of the stuff that came out in the 90s and early millennium around the positive one-way thinking, sort of set people up for a whole lot of unrealistic expectations that they could be one-sided all the time, and it's not true. It's false. So then if they're feeling they have to be a certain way, or it's just supposed to be supported all the time, and their partner's only supposed to support them and never challenging them, then they've got a fantasy that is completely artificial. And so then they're going to be basing their fantasy on their what their life's demonstrating, and that's going to end up feeling like a nightmare because it's not living up to the fantasy. So better to get rid of the fantasies and think that things can be one-sided, or your partner's going to be one-sided, realizing your partner's going to support and challenge you just the same as you're going to do them. And once you can see that, it's sort of you start to understand the game a lot better.
And that's very similar. One of my girlfriends posted up on Facebook today, what podcasts are you listening to? And someone asked, what are you sort of looking for? And she said, motivation. And I think they asked, do you want motivation or something like that? And my comment was, well, don't look for things that are just going to try and get you to be positive all of the time, because you're setting yourself up for failure. So that's kind of what you were talking about, hey, Mike, is you can't be positive all of the time. And the expectation on ourselves to constantly be positive, I have to be positive, it is going to set you up for failure, because you're not always going to be positive. Yes, you can see the positive side of things. You can change your perception and the way you view things. Things are always going to have positives and negatives. So just the same, not everything is always negative, but it is unrealistic to expect that you're always going to be happy, that you're always going to be positive, that you're never going to be angry. It's just not going to happen, right?
100%. And negative thoughts are there. See, if you look at negative thoughts as a feedback mechanism to let you know you've had an unrealistic expectation on yourself or someone else, it's actually reminding you and bringing you back to check your expectations. Or you could be setting, like, for example, goals outside of your values, and therefore you're not achieving them. You have negative thoughts, you self-depreciate, you beat yourself up. You say, why am I not achieving this? Well, that there's a wake-up call that you're creating an expectation on yourself to, like, fulfill a goal that's not actually congruent to your values. So the negative thoughts actually feedback. There's an unrealistic expectation somewhere. So that's what the purpose of it's for. But a lot of people have not realized that that's how they should be looking at the negative thoughts, and they're then making themselves wrong and beating themselves up for having the negative thought instead of actually getting the crux of what the feedback is about.
And so, one of the things that, we want to be successful in all that we do as human beings. And so, we want to see achievement. And if you're living outside of your values and you're not meeting these high expectations, then you're going to struggle to meet the, to feel like you're achieving. So what would somebody do if they were feeling like, I'm just not winning at the moment, I can't seem to do everything right, and then with that becomes a little bit of a roll-on effect, and things just get a bit worse and worse and worse. So what does somebody do in those kinds of instances?
So if you're saying, the question is, if someone's like feeling like they're getting challenged in a lot of areas, or they're getting a lot of negative feedback about multiple areas of their life, is that what you're meaning?
Yeah, or maybe around setting goals or expectations on themselves. Maybe like if they're working in a job and they've got this expectation that they're going to do really well, or this is what I wanted to achieve. And then I guess, with COVID-19, it's changed the game for lots of businesses in particular. And so things are just not the same anymore. And so if you're still trying to reach the same expectations from before COVID-19, then you can be setting yourself up for failure. And then you're not really feeling like you're achieving, which then spirals you down. So what do you do in those cases?
So then you want to break down each of the things, because it won't be like as a whole overarching piece. There'll be certain components that they've got the expectations on. So you want to get really clear on what those expectations are in the first place, and then really assess, well, is this expectation realistic? Number one, does it align to my values? Am I doing something that I'm actually uninspired by, or don't have the skills for, or disempowered in, and therefore I'm self-depreciating because I feel like I can't achieve it? And then you could say, well, then, is there something within your realm you can empower yourself in, that you can upskill yourself in, that you would love to upskill yourself in? If you can answer yes to those, then you've got some answers and solutions there. But if you're also creating an unrealistic expectation in the sense of the economy changing, you had some financial goals inside your business, or some sales targets, and you've still got those targets and you haven't pivoted and you haven't assessed the situation and then changed expectation based on the current climate, the economic climate and what we've got, then yes, you could say then that's potentially unrealistic, and you have to shift the expectation and it should become more realistic. So it's a matter of really breaking it down and assessing it based on the changes that have taken place. Yeah, because we all agree, right? The world's different now. I think the world's changed. I don't think we're ever going to go exactly back to how things were. It's changed. We've, as a consciousness, collective consciousness, we've evolved, whether we like it or not. And this is the thing: sometimes it's going to be perceived painful. Sometimes some people won't be perceiving this as painful, all depending on where they were positioned, what business they were involved in, how flexible they've got with their behavior to adapt to the situation, because the stress comes from the inability to adapt to a changing situation. So those that have been prepared or have mitigated risk, or can be quite nimble and adjust quickly, they feel less stress. But if you're sort of vibrating lower and you've got sort of all or nothing language and you can't see, it's just black and white, then from that place it's very, very stressful. So again, the quality of the questions we're asking ourselves and what we're comparing things to is going to really determine our outlook.
Absolutely. I'm just going to quickly plug, look, if anyone's got any questions, then please do fire them through and we can answer them. We've got probably at least about 15 more minutes, 10-15 minutes. So if you've got questions, throw them in there and we'll definitely answer them. Otherwise, we can come back to them and answer them later if you're watching this as a replay. So what we're talking about. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought now. So do you have maybe, Cheryl, any examples that you can share of what we've just been talking about, these unrealistic expectations, and maybe share some tips around what you've done as well to overcome some of the stresses or the lows in points of your life, or especially maybe over this time of COVID-19, because your role with us has also changed, and I know that you've gone through a bit of conflict yourself. Whatever you feel like sharing.
I'll just share. Cool. This topic, and this is why I'm so grateful for you opening up this space and this conversation of mental illness, and is because it's often a topic that people are suffering alone in their homes with, because we, like you said before, there's a lot of sharing on Facebook, and this is what it looks like, and it's that external society's views of what it should look like, and without realizing what it means for us or where our values stand. I've just gone off on a tangent, actually. Come back. So what I was going to say was the reason why this is like so close to me, so important to me, is because and Mike touched on it before as well, was that from my childhood, the reason why this area is quite touchy is because my mum suffered from schizophrenia, And so our entire life growing up, myself and my siblings, we basically lived a life where we had no mum. She wasn't present with us, and so we basically grew up without that parent figure. And especially being a woman without that guidance and stuff through different stages of your life, there's definitely an element missing there. And so for me, what was obvious was that coming into my adulthood, it was really important to me that I became that thing that I lacked in my childhood, if that makes sense. So being a really present mum, doing whatever I could to deliver being a good mum was really important to me. And so that comes back to this whole experience of COVID-19 and how it's been a massive conflict for me because I've not been able to be super present with my children. On the days that I've had off work and the weekends and Mondays and Fridays and stuff like that, Michael and I have been like, man, this is our dream life, like, being with our kids all the time. And and that's been really like great for us because that's my highest value. But at the same instance, there's also this part of me that really loves doing something for myself and doing something that's of personal growth wise. And so some of the things that have really helped me while I've been really time poor and not been able to work on projects that I'm really passionate about, something that's really helped me manage is actually being connected with other women. So for example, I've participated in a couple of talanors, and that has been so I've got one with 4 other Māori and Pacific Island women, and that's been great. We had a talanor for 5.5 hours, and we've done that twice so far. And you and I, Wyndi, have had our own talanor as well. We've had our chats, and that's lasted up to 2-3 hours, and that's actually allowed me to keep really grounded and just relating to people. So I think that if you are a Māori or Pacific Islander background, that's really important, is being able to connect with other women on that level. So that's definitely helped keep my sanity in that way. The other thing that's been really important to me is looking after my own mental health and well-being. And while in a perfect world, I would be doing my yoga and breathing exercises and meditation every single day. Sometimes that's not possible. So for example, in the last 2 days, in the last 48 hours, I'm living off 4 to 6 hours sleep over the 2 days because my son's had a fever. And so my husband and I have been up for the last 2 days. And where was I going with that? And so I've not been able to do my meditation and Kriya and yoga and stuff. And so I want people to know that sometimes as well, our expectations of doing exercise every single day isn't always possible, or having that time to keep yourself grounded isn't always possible. But it's being able to at least make sure that you're doing it when you can, and never going more than, my rule of thumb, which a friend actually explained the other day, was actually not going any more than 2 days without whatever it is that keeps you grounded, because more than 2 days it becomes a habit. So so even if you are if you're thinking, if you're a woman out there and thinking that your expectation is that you've got to do this me time every single day, let go of that expectation and just do what you can when you can.
Yeah, I liked what you said, Cheryl, and that's something that I worked on as well with Mike, was creating guidelines for myself around what I was okay with and not okay with. So, for instance, I was like, oh, I don't eat sugar. Well, actually, that's a bit of a lie, because sometimes I do. So it's like, well, let's just get really clear on when I'm going to allow myself to be able to do that. And so it might be a case of my kids' birthdays or whatever. And so, sometimes you're just like, okay, I'm going to exercise, and it might not be every single day, but I'll make sure that it's at least 3 or 4 times a day. And that's something that I'm happy with. And those are the guidelines that I stick to. So I like the way that you said that, don't go more than 2 days. So at least you still feel like, yep, I can still succeed in this. It can still be an achievement. I'm not setting unrealistic expectations of myself. So let's just talk a little bit about burnout, which could still be happening, although, you know, mind you, some people like essential service workers are probably working really hard. You know, I know that me and my team are working very hard at the moment. There might be some people who are not working at all, but are doing work with kids and family stuff and chores and gardening and whatever else have you. So how do we reduce burnout, or getting to the stage of burnout? Do you want to talk us through that, Mike?
Yeah, sure. So burnout, meaning that you're overstressed, I guess is what you're saying, right? That'd be what you mean. So yeah, so if you look at stress as well, there's two different types of stress. There's eustress, which is the stress where when you're operating in your highest values, you can handle support and challenge at greater levels because you're inspired by it. So remember, nothing of great gain is ever achieved easily, right? So often if you've got a big vision, a big mission or a goal, there's going to be challenges that come with it. When you've got your goal set that's aligned with your highest value, your boss at the top, then you're inspired to actually work through the challenge. You'll push through that resistance a lot easier. If you're setting goals that are like lower down on your priorities, on your values, then it's a different type of stress. It's distress, which then distress can lead to disease. So it's a different type of stress, distress and eustress. If you're finding you're procrastinating, you're getting frustrated, you're like your self-worth is not there, often it's because, again, we're setting goals or priorities that are lower and our values is higher on our values. So more likely to feel burnt out, frustrated, pissed off, you're setting things that aren't congruent with your highest values. So to avoid that, even during this time, even though you may have distractions, it'd be nice to try and stay aligned to your highest values as much as possible during this time so that you can actually be the best version of yourself because you're actually honoring what's most important to you.
I think I went through a stage at some point last year maybe where I was just like, you know what, I'm not doing anything unless I love it and enjoy it. And that works really well until you do have to consider other people as well.
Well, that's then putting somebody else's values onto yourself. So really.
Yeah.
But that's a good rule to work by. Mind you, everything has got a benefit to it. So even living into someone else's values even if it's a short period of time, can still add value to you in your life too.
You're like a really great question to ask. So you go.
There you go.
I was just going to say, if you're having that, like, again, it's a conflict at home, or there's, between you and your partner, or you and one of your children, for example, and they've got, a different set of values, take some time and sit down and just go, well, how's them fulfilling their highest value helping me fulfill my highest value right now, and vice versa. So that way, that what you may have been perceiving getting in the way, you can actually start to see it as a blessing and something to be grateful for. And I think that another really important thing is gratitude, right? Because being grateful, again, to a state of grace and gratitude is really, really important for maintaining the equilibrium in the mind as well, so we're not getting too polarized. So gratitude for the things you do have, and then what you do have, you start to expand. So gratitude is a really, really important thing for us to be focusing on, especially times like this, because there's always going to be someone that's got another set of challenges that probably wouldn't want to have. And so just remind yourself that, like, what you do have, do you have a roof over your head still? Like, start wherever you want to start, and then start expanding that gratitude list out and do that on a regular basis.
I've had to do that a number of times, stepping into gratitude.
Yeah. Like, and so here's the thing, even if I have this knowledge, right, help people and assist people, I still have my blind spots. I still have challenges and shit that comes up. Like, shared today with Wyndi, like, for whatever reason, I couldn't sleep last night, and I just woke up after like about an hour or 2 hours this morning feeling absolutely crashed, like I'd been run over by a truck. So, that for me was challenging because I had things I've got to show up for and so forth today. So it's just a matter of then just really starting to govern your own mind, starting where you can, if you're feeling that you just get grateful for what you actually do have, and then keep expanding that out.
Such a good point. I remember after my first breast cancer diagnosis in 2017, I started doing a gratitude practice, and it was just a 10-minute gratitude meditation that I did every day. And it's incredible how it changes the way that you perceive things. And so you're able to look at challenge in quite a different way. And, you know, I got to a stage, well, I am at a stage where I'm grateful for even having had cancer, which I don't know that many people would go out to try and do. But when you can really look at challenges and think, actually, I'm really grateful for that, and see the learnings and how you're growing and how it's really helping you to fulfill your purpose, then you have no reason but to be grateful for the challenges that you face. Okay, so I'm wary that we've got like literally 2 more minutes, so I'm just going to ask you both 5 like maybe daily things that new daily habits that you think people could be doing that will help to lift spirits, bring gratitude, help them through these really challenging times. Yeah, 5 things each.
Okay, I'll go first. My things are definitely having some sort of a practice for yourself, and whatever that may be, because everybody's different. So even though I really get a lot of joy out of doing yoga and stuff, and meditation, that might not be somebody else's cup of tea. So doing like having some sort of a daily ritual thing, and obviously going back to what I said before, make sure you don't go more than 2 days without doing that. For me is looking at the nutrition, drinking water. Like, so I drink a specific type of water, and so making sure that I'm drinking at least 2 liters of that every day. Definitely taking care of my food intake as well. So I know that, like, whenever I eat great, I feel great. Whenever I eat trash, I feel trash. So definitely doing that. And for me as well, probably living into my values is really important, like what Mike has been talking about. So for me, just putting aside that time, even if it's once a week, for Mike and I and the kids to do something as a family, that's so important to us. And whenever we do that, we always feel like our cup is full. So it's 4 things. And and gratitude, that's probably the other thing. And that might be as easy as every day, like looking at your wins and writing it down, like 2 or 3 things in a book, like having a specific book in relation to that, because then that becomes evidence that your life is working and it is on track. So maybe writing down, maybe over the next 5 days you might do that. Write 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for, and give yourself evidence that life is great.
Awesome, thank you,
Nice.
Mike.
Some of the things that I do, definitely gratitude. I'll run through things I'm grateful for, whatever it might be for the day. Some simple, small things, or it could just be large things, but just genuinely, and when doing it, really genuinely connecting and being present with it, not just doing it airy-fairy, but getting really grounded and present and really focusing on what you do actually have. Because again, it's never a challenge without a support, vice versa. So I think also taking stock in where you currently are. So if you're going through some business strife and you weren't prepared for this, and you're feeling like you're going down a direction you may not want to go down, is to really take stock where you actually are and start to ask some good quality questions about finding some solutions to get out of the situation you're currently in, and then to reach out to someone else for assistance. That there's someone else that can perhaps see things that you can't see that can assist you. So never be afraid to reach out and ask someone else to assist you and helping you there. I do cold showers every morning, like cold.
Nice.
And I got that from Wim Hof, like, he teaches the whole cold lake dives and that. I tell you what, it took me to get used to it, but I've been doing it for probably over 6 months now, and I absolutely love it. Like, it's hard as it gets cooler, but man, you feel alive. It turns the body on. Come to there. I do that in the morning, so if I'm going to go to bed, I won't do that before bed because I want the body to relax to go to bed. So the only time I have a warm shower now is in the evening, say, for example, before bed. And I've been earthing myself again. So I go through, I make sure I get some vitamin D, and I go out and earth myself on the ground, on the actual grass, on soil, not concrete. in bare feet and actually get back in tune to the Earth's frequency, because we're on rubber soles all day, every day. We're on sort of built up concrete, so that the Earth's energy is quite different. We've got all these different EMFs we're being affected by with Wi-Fi routers and this and that. At the end of the day, the human body is just energy. So for me, Earth is really, really important. I just look at a bit of meditation when I go out in the sun or stand on the Earth and just ground myself. So those are things that I'm doing that I really enjoy.
That nature one's a big one for me as well. I feel amazing after being in nature.
Yeah, and vitamin D is so crucial. Like getting a bit of sun, like it's actually really crucial for one's mental health as well. Just one thing I want to sum up really quickly too, just from my perspective. Someone is getting depressed, and the depression is comparing their current reality to some fantasy they wished or thought it should be like. So if that is what you're doing, get really clear on that and get clear on what the components of the fantasy are, and start to look for the benefits to those particular components, and so that you can actually start to bring some balance to your perception on that. Yeah, be very, very wise.
Very wise words. Any last comments, Shiz, Mike?
No, I'm good. Anything to add, Wyndi?
No.
Well, I'll just quickly say, Liz has just said, laugh out loud, okay, I'm on the right track with cold showers every morning because that's life in Samoa.
Nice. Hey, thanks so much for putting this together, Wyndi, and coming on, Cheryl, and Wyndi, for providing value to people that make value to listen to this. So thanks for putting it together.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really glad to be able to bring this talanoa, this conversation, this korero, because we've noticed it talking to business owners that some of the ones actually that we're working really closely with, they're actually doing really awesome and really seeing the opportunities. So I'm seeing so much good stuff happening, but there are definitely people out there that are really struggling through this time. So we're really grateful to be able to have this korero. So thank you both for having this chat with us. And I feel like we can probably talk about a million other things. Okay, a million's a bit of an exaggeration, but I think there's so many different things that we can talk about around values and unrealistic expectations and wealth creation, business, health, all sorts of things. So I look forward to many more conversations in the future. And just before we go, so on Thursday at 2 p.m, we're doing a webinar on budgeting, and it's not just for business budgets, it's also for personal budgets. We know that people are losing jobs, having to go down to 80% wages or just getting subsidies, and the effects that has on our families, our security, roofs over our heads, food on our tables. So we're running a session on how to budget, giving you some ideas and tips on where you might be able to look to reduce some of your costings, and making sure that you are putting aside money still for all those things that are really important to you, like we've talked about today, about the values. Mike and I were saying, you've got to make sure that when you're in your bubble, you still have the luxuries, those the bicycle trainers and all those sorts of things to keep your sanity so you can stay in your values. So we'll be talking about that on Thursday. So we'll be posting a link up on our Facebook page. So thank you again so much, Cheryl and Mike, for coming along today. Thank you to everybody who's watching and everyone who will be watching this in the future. All
Thanks
right.
for having us. Matua.
Thanks, Wyndi. See you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
See you all.